Maybe you're going through a strange phase, a moment in life where you're doing everything right, fulfilling your responsibilities, smiling at others, but deep down, you feel more and more distant from yourself. It's like you're present, but not really there. You go through the motions, but your soul feels absent, as if you're living in a body that no longer feels excitement, with a mind that can't find meaning anymore, and a heart that still beats, but no longer truly feels. And when your head hits the pillow at night, that silent question echoes, one no one else hears, but that screams within you. Who have I become? This feeling of no longer recognizing yourself doesn't appear out of nowhere. It sneaks in slowly, through unconscious choices, paths taken to please others, pieces of yourself sacrificed in exchange for acceptance, stability, approval. You left fragments of who you were along the way. You hid your dreams, swallowed your words, reshaped yourself to fit into places that no longer hold you. And now, even when surrounded by people, you feel a void you can't name. It's not loneliness, it's the absence of yourself. The truth is, no one ever taught us how to know ourselves. We were taught how to get good grades, land a decent job, follow the rules. But no one showed us how to look inward, to feel honestly, to listen to our deepest desires, to tend to our pain before it defined us. We were trained to be accepted, not to be whole. But today, here in this conversation, I want to invite you to something different, not to become someone new, but to reconnect, to return inward, to begin a journey of self-knowledge not as a duty, but as a liberation. Because you are not lost, you're just disconnected from who you really are, and that connection can be restored. You deserve to remember your truth. You deserve to live a life that makes sense to you, not just to others. And the first step isn't to change everything. It's to look inside with courage, with tenderness, with listening. This might be the beginning of your return to yourself. Self-knowledge is not a trend. It's not a social media cliché, nor a luxury reserved for those who have time to sit around and philosophize. Self-knowledge is survival. It's the solid foundation that holds up all your choices, decisions, and relationships. And contrary to what many believe, it's not about becoming a better person in an external sense, more productive, more in control, more efficient. Self-knowledge is about becoming more real. It's seeing who you are underneath everything you were told you should be. Simply put, knowing yourself is recognizing your own emotions, boundaries, needs, triggers, talents, fears, and desires. It's understanding where your reactions come from, why certain patterns repeat, what paralyzes you, what pushes you forward. It's uncovering why you self-sabotage, why you attract certain types of relationships, why you hurt over things others don't even notice. It's placing a gentle magnifying glass over yourself, not to judge but to understand. And most importantly, self-knowledge doesn't happen all at once. It's a path, not a destination. It comes in layers, in phases, in back and forth steps. It's looking at yourself today and realizing that a version of you no longer fits. It's revisiting memories, unlearning beliefs, challenging old truths, and little by little, starting to live with more intention, more presence, more inner freedom. It's not always a comfortable process. Looking inward often hurts, because you will find open wounds, blind spots, parts of you that were forgotten or pushed away. You'll come face to face with what you've long tried to hide, but in that confrontation, in that raw, honest reflection, transformation begins, because you can't heal what you can't see, and you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Self-knowledge is the starting point of every true change. Without it, you repeat. With it, you choose. Without it, you react. With it, you respond. Without it, you live someone else's life. With it, you finally begin to live your own. And if today you feel lost, maybe you don't need a new path. Maybe you just need a new gaze, one that's deeper, more compassionate, more honest about who you are and who you're ready to become. Have you ever felt like you're living on autopilot? You wake up, go through your tasks, interact, smile, reply to messages, but feel nothing, as if you're drifting through your days inside an invisible capsule, disconnected from yourself, from time, from the world. That's the pain of living on autopilot, being physically present but emotionally absent, functioning but not being whole. It's like breathing without feeling the air, eating without tasting the food, speaking without hearing your own voice. Autopilot is the outcome of a life lived in survival mode, and when routine becomes repetition, meaning slips away. You start making decisions without awareness. You enter relationships that don't nourish you. You make choices that don't reflect who you are, but rather what others expect from you. And the cruelest part? Often this is seen as normal life, because everyone seems too busy to stop and ask, what am I doing to myself? This numbed way of existing doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's built over time, through unresolved traumas, silenced pain, postponed dreams, through the fear of stopping and truly listening to yourself. Because stopping might mean facing an emptiness. And facing that emptiness can be terrifying. So we keep going, piling on distractions, goals, tasks, commitments, anything to avoid looking inward, anything to avoid touching what's silently screaming within. But living on autopilot comes with a heavy cost. It costs you your authenticity, your spontaneity, your emotional well-being, because your body might keep functioning, but your heart begins to fade little by little, and one day you realize you no longer recognize yourself. You don't know what you enjoy. You find no pleasure in the little things. You can't tell where the performance ends and your true self begins. The good news is, there is a way back, and that path begins with one simple yet powerful decision: to turn off the autopilot and start feeling again, to start paying attention to yourself, to ask uncomfortable questions, to listen with presence, to allow the pain to come, but also to let healing begin. Because living on autopilot might keep you functioning, but it's only by living with awareness that you truly begin to bloom. Looking inward is a radical act of courage, because, contrary to what many imagine, it's not a peaceful stroll through the gardens of the soul. It's a deep dive, sometimes dark, where you come face to face with parts of yourself you'd rather forget. Your pain, your repeated patterns, your most intimate insecurities, all the things you've learned to hide behind smiles, productivity, or silence. And that's why so many people run from this journey, because looking inward isn't just about getting to know yourself. It's about confronting yourself. There's a real fear in facing your own truth, fear of discovering you're not as strong as you pretend to be, that you carry wounds that still hurt, that you're trapped in patterns that sabotage your relationships, that the anger you feel isn't really about others, but about yourself. Fear of admitting that you don't really know who you are, that you're lost, that deep down you're afraid to change because you have no idea what you'll find on the other side. But it's exactly in that space, between discomfort and discovery, where transformation lives. Because looking inward isn't about judging what you find. It's about embracing it. It's about recognizing your shadows without condemning yourself for them. It's about understanding that the pain you feel has a story, has a source, has a reason. That the behaviors you criticize in yourself are not character flaws. They are survival strategies that once kept you safe. Looking inward means asking the questions no one ever taught you to ask. Why does this affect me so deeply? What am I trying to avoid? Whose voice is this harsh critic in my head? Who would I be if I stopped constantly adapting? These are not questions with quick answers, but they open doors to a life with more presence, more truth, more meaning. And it's important to remember, you don't have to do this alone. There is therapy, there are books, meditation practices, transformative conversations. Self-knowledge isn't a lonely road. It is personal, yes, but it can and should be supported. Because when you start to look at yourself with more humanity, you realize that your wounds don't define you. They simply show you where care is still needed. Looking inward is the first step toward no longer merely surviving, and finally, beginning to truly live. Not behind masks, not through roles, but with authenticity, with presence, with soul. From a very young age, we learn that being who we truly are can be dangerous, that showing vulnerability is scary, that expressing sadness pushes people away, that being too spontaneous might lead to rejection, and so over time we start wearing masks, social, emotional, relational masks. Some fit so tightly that even we forget they're not really part of us. The mask of strength, of efficiency, of lightness, of constant happiness, they protect us, help us be accepted, but little by little, they also begin to suffocate us. These masks aren't malicious inventions, they're adaptations, ways of protecting ourselves in a world that hasn't always been kind. The child who wasn't allowed to cry became the adult who hides emotion. The teenager who was rejected became the perfectionist professional. The person once told they were too much now shrinks themselves to fit in. And the saddest part? Many of these masks are so praised that you start to believe you're only worthy if you match what others approve of, if you're always available, always pleasant, always right. But behind every mask, there's a real self, tired of pretending, tired of smiling when all it wants is to cry, tired of being strong when it really needs comfort, tired of saying yes when everything inside screams no. That real self gets buried, silenced, forgotten, until one day, with a spark of courage, it starts asking to come through. And that's when the symptoms appear: anxiety, identity crises, emptiness, disconnection. It's your true self whispering, "I want to breathe." The turning point comes when you realize you don't need those masks to be loved, that you can be who you are, with your truth, your flaws, your light, and your shadow. That authenticity doesn't drive the right people away. It only filters out those not ready to love you fully. Because yes, the mask may protect, but it also blocks real connection. And yes, removing these masks is scary. Scary because of rejection, judgment, the fear of not being enough. But it's the only path to living with ease, to connecting deeply, to feeling peace within. Life doesn't happen while you're performing. It happens when you allow yourself to be. Maybe today is the time to ask yourself, what mask am I still wearing to survive? And more importantly, who am I when I finally allow myself to exist without it? As much as we try to live in the present, many of our decisions, reactions, and choices are still tied to the past. We carry wounds that never fully healed, pains we've learned to hide, but that continue to shape who we are and how we relate to others. And the most striking realization is this: often without noticing, it's not the adult who's deciding, it's the wounded child still living inside of us. Have you ever asked yourself why certain criticisms paralyze you? Why in some situations you feel an overwhelming anxiety that doesn't quite match the moment? Why you sabotage yourself just when you're about to achieve something important? That's not coincidence. It's emotional memory. It's unhealed wounds pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Wounds like rejection, which make you avoid intimacy for fear of being left. Humiliation, which pushes you to constantly seek approval. Abandonment, which leaves you dependent on external validation. Betrayal, which makes it hard to trust. Injustice, which turns you into a control freak. Each of these pains builds an inner narrative, a lens through which you see the world and yourself. And as long as these wounds remain hidden, they will keep running your life. You might change jobs, move to another city, find a new partner, but you'll keep repeating the same patterns. Because what drives you isn't what's happening outside, it's what's still unhealed inside. The good news is that self-knowledge gives you the tools to begin healing, and it all starts with naming. Putting a name to the pain is the first step toward letting it go. From there, you can observe your triggers with more awareness. Understand that the anger isn't about now. It's about an old wound that's been touched. That the anxiety isn't incapacity. It's fear of reliving a past trauma. And in this process, self-compassion is essential. Blaming yourself for your wounds won't help. You did what you needed to survive. The strategies that now feel like sabotage were once your salvation. And that's okay. Now you're in a different place. Now you can choose. You can care. You can rebuild from truth, not from pain. Because when we heal the wounds of the past, we finally begin to live the present with freedom. Most of us grew up without learning how to name what we feel. When we cried, they called it drama. When we got angry, they told us to swallow it. When we felt afraid, they laughed at our fragility. And so we learned to silence the body, to suppress the heart, and to mask the soul. We grew up emotionally illiterate, feeling so much but not knowing what. The result? An entire generation that confuses sadness with laziness, anxiety with restlessness, frustration with fatigue, and carries around a nameless pain that weighs on us all day long. But emotional awareness begins precisely when you give a name to what once felt like confusion, when you pause, breathe, and say, "What I'm feeling is sadness," or "This is fear," or "This is shame." It might sound simple, but it's transformative, because naming a feeling is like turning on the light in a dark room. The feeling is still there, but now you can see it. You can understand where it came from, what it's trying to tell you, and what it needs in order to pass more gently. Emotions are messages, not threats. Anger, for instance, might be showing you that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness, that something needs to be released. Fear, that something new is asking for care. Guilt, that a personal value was violated. And when you learn to listen to these messages instead of repressing them, you begin to live with more clarity, more aligned with yourself, more truthfully. This practice of naming your emotions can happen in the quiet of your room, in the pages of a journal during therapy, or even in a simple moment of pause during your day. Instead of saying, "I'm feeling bad," try saying, "I'm feeling insecure, I'm disappointed, I'm confused." Then that shift takes you out of generalization and onto the path of clarity. And with clarity comes the possibility of action. Not knowing what you feel keeps you trapped. Knowing sets you free, because when you recognize your emotions, you stop being ruled by them and start walking alongside them with awareness. You are not weak for feeling. You are human, and the more you listen to yourself, the more whole you become. At some point along the way, self-knowledge was turned into a race. A silent competition where winning means always being calm, balanced, positive, and productive, as if growing meant eliminating pain, avoiding conflict, walking a straight line without stumbling. As if the evolved self never felt anger, never cried, never lost control. But that idea is a trap, because it turns personal development into just another form of self-demand, a pressure disguised as growth. And instead of freeing yourself, you become imprisoned by an unreachable ideal of emotional perfection. But real growth isn't about performing balance. It's about moving through chaos with awareness. It's about feeling everything and still continuing. It's about seeing yourself fall and not abandoning yourself because of it. It's about understanding that personal development isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You return to the same places over and over, but each time with more clarity, more maturity, more presence. And that can't be measured in charts. It's something you feel, in your body, in your choices, in the quiet peace that begins to emerge in the simplest moments. You're not here to become some ideal version of yourself. You're here to become whole. And that includes your shadows, your impulses, your setbacks. Growing is learning to embrace yourself when everything falls apart. It's stopping the self-punishment for feeling too much. It's replacing "what's wrong with me" with "what is this pain trying to show me?" It's letting go of the rush, the control, the perfect image. It's surrendering to the process, with honesty, with patience, with care. True evolution doesn't make you harder. It makes you lighter. It doesn't make you immune to pain. It gives you tools to walk through it. It doesn't turn you into some Zen character. It makes you a human being more aware of your own humanity. And the most beautiful part of it all, there's no finish line. You're not going to get there one day, because personal development is a path you walk while you live, while you stumble, while you feel. So if today you slipped, cried, felt like you went backwards, just breathe. You're exactly where you need to be. And that, too, is part of your process. Self-knowledge doesn't only happen in grand revelations. It's built in the everyday, in the small moments when you choose to listen to yourself instead of ignoring your inner voice. It's there, in the middle of a busy routine, that you can begin to access your essence in a practical, accessible, and real way. You don't need to stop the world or wait for a spiritual retreat. All it takes is presence, intention, and a few simple tools that can open wide windows within you. The first one is journaling, the habit of writing about yourself. It can be in a notebook, a digital note, wherever feels right. Write as if you're having a conversation with yourself. What are you feeling today? What thoughts keep repeating? What situations affected you more than they should? Writing helps organize the internal chaos. It gives shape to what once felt like confusion. And over time, it begins to reveal patterns, triggers, and answers that were buried beneath the rush. Another powerful tool is conscious self-observation. Throughout your day, pause and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Why did I react that way? What does this say about me? It can be before a meeting, after a conflict, or in a quiet moment. That pause creates space between the stimulus and your response. And in that space is where freedom is born, the freedom to choose rather than react on autopilot. Therapy, of course, remains one of the deepest and most effective ways to truly know yourself. Having someone who listens without judgment, who challenges you with the right questions, who helps you name and organize what you feel, is like having a mirror that reflects your soul with clarity. It's not about fixing, it's about understanding, and understanding transforms. The practice of meditation can also be revolutionary. It doesn't need to be long or complex. Just a few minutes of silence and mindful attention each day can reconnect you with the now, help you notice your thoughts without getting swept away by them, let you observe emotions without drowning in them. In addition, conscious feedback from people you trust can be incredibly valuable. Ask someone sincerely, "How do you see me? What patterns do you notice in me? What do you think I keep repeating without realizing?" Sometimes others see in us what we are still learning to recognize. And finally, reflect on your relationships. They are powerful mirrors. What do you tolerate too much? Where do you shrink yourself? With whom do you feel free? Who activates your triggers? Your connections reveal a lot about your beliefs, your wounds, your needs, and also about your growth. Self-knowledge isn't theory, it's practice, it's a daily decision. It's choosing every day to be more honest with yourself. And little by little, that changes everything. There comes a moment on the journey of self-knowledge when the questions begin to change in tone. They move beyond, "How can I improve?" or "How can I be more productive?" and begin to reach deeper layers. Why am I here? What is the meaning of my existence? What gives my life meaning beyond what I do? And that's when we enter the sacred territory of spirituality, philosophy, and purpose. A place where personal growth is no longer just a performance tool, but an expression of the soul. Spirituality, in this context, isn't limited to religion. It's the invisible thread that connects you to something greater than your fears, your goals, and your obligations. It might be God, the universe, nature, or your expanded consciousness. It's that quiet space within where you begin to sense that life is about more than achievements, that there's something in you that is untouchable, eternal, profound. And when you connect with that, the external noise begins to lose power. The rush slows down. The soul breathes. Philosophy enters as the art of thinking deeply about life, of questioning habits, ready-made ideas and social norms, of reflecting on virtues, values, meaning, ethics, death, time. Thinkers like Socrates, Epictetus, Seneca, Viktor Frankl remind us that life isn't about avoiding suffering. It's about finding meaning even within it. That purpose isn't a destination, but a way of walking, and that to live well is to live with truth, with intention, with coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. And then we arrive at purpose, so romanticized, often mistaken for grand missions, but at its core, it's simple. Purpose is what makes you feel alive. What aligns your actions with your values? What connects you to something greater than yourself? It might be creating, nurturing, teaching, building, serving. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling that you're contributing to the world in a way that fills you from within. When you live without purpose, the emptiness grows. Achievements lose their flavor. The days become repetitive. But when purpose guides your steps, even the small things shine. Because everything you do, and from conversation to work, from silence to affection, carries meaning. And meaning is what transforms survival into life. So if today you feel lost, ask yourself less, what do I need to do? And more, what connects me to something greater? Because the most transformative answers don't come from rushing, they come from silence. After looking inward, facing wounds, shedding masks, and recognizing patterns, there comes a crucial moment in the journey of self-knowledge, the moment of the reconstruction. And contrary to what many believe, rebuilding yourself is not about inventing an idealized new version of who you are. It's about returning to your essence, with more awareness, more compassion, and more freedom. It's about letting go of the armor that once protected you, but now holds you back. It's about dropping the labels that were stuck to you over the years, labels that never truly reflected who you are. Rebuilding your identity means allowing yourself to be whole, not perfect. It's about recognizing your flaws without being defined by them, about integrating your shadows instead of repressing them, about embracing your scars as part of your story, without shame, because you don't need to erase the past in order to grow. You just need to learn how to use it as a foundation, not as a prison. And above all, rebuilding requires heart compassion for yourself. The kind of compassion you offer others, but rarely allow yourself to feel. The kind that says, It's okay to have fallen. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to be in process. You don't need harshness to grow. You need kindness. Because it's not pressure that transforms, it's love that heals. This reconstruction happens quietly, in the details. When you start treating yourself with more respect, when you stop comparing yourself, when you choose more consciously who you walk with, what you consume, what you tolerate, when you learn to say no without guilt, when you embrace your vulnerability as strength, not as weakness, when you begin living aligned with what you believe, not with what others expect of you. Rebuilding your identity also means understanding that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, that your worth doesn't lie in being accepted by everyone, but in being true to yourself, that living in truth may unsettle some, but it brings you a peace no external approval can offer, and little by little, without rushing, you begin to become, not the best version of yourself as if it were some goal, but the most whole version, the one who lives with coherence, feels deeply, fails with humility, and loves with presence. That is your real self. That is the reunion. And it begins every time you choose to treat yourself with truth and with love. For a long time, you believed you needed to become someone else, stronger, smarter, more productive, more stable, more accepted. And you spent your life trying to check off this invisible list of expectations created by society, your family, or even yourself. You tried to fit in, to control everything, to handle it all. But the more you shaped yourself to fit, the more you lost touch with who you are. Because deep down, that you didn't need to become someone better. You just needed to remember who you are. Remember the curious child who questioned everything, the young dreamer who still believed, the sensitive soul who always felt too much, the inner light that still pulses within, even after so much pain, so much exhaustion, so much self-editing. You don't need to create a new version of yourself. You simply need to come home. Come back to yourself, to the place where your essence has always existed. Self-knowledge isn't about fixing yourself. It's about reconnecting. It's not about evolving to please others. It's about awakening to your truth. And that truth isn't in formulas, gurus, or miraculous promises. It's in you, in your pain and in your light, in your silence and your presence, in the questions you haven't yet answered, but that have already begun to change you. So today, I invite you to stop running, to stop comparing, to stop demanding so much of yourself, and instead, I invite you to breathe, to feel, to listen, to remember. Remember that you are not a draft waiting to be completed. You are a work of art in constant creation, a life that pulses, a path that is shaped by walking. And if someday you feel lost again, come back home. Return to what is simple, to what is real, to what is yours. Because your essence never left you. It was just waiting for you to listen again. You don't need to become someone. You just need to remember who you already are.